Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first of 5 virtual listening sessions that we are holding throughout the next few months on the My Healthy Climate Plan implementation, with tonight's focus being on cleaning the electric grid. I see that we have about 68 attendees that are logging in right now, and we had over 300 registered. So I'm going to start the kickoff with just a few housekeeping items. But before I go there, I should introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Acevedo, and I work with our Environmental Support Division. So what we're going to do is go through a few housekeeping items and just remind everybody that all of your lines are muted. Tonight's purpose is a listening session, so we will not be answering any questions in the Q&A box. Eagle will present first, and then we'll describe after that presentation how to make a comment and open the floor to the comments. We are recording this session and we'll post it to our YouTube channel along with sending out an email afterwards. So make sure to look for that in your inbox. And I think that's the big stuff right now. So I see people are still trickling in, but we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation portion. And then we'll have plenty of time for listening session after. So joining me tonight is Corey Conley, who leads Eagle's Office of Climate and Energy. And Corey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks everyone for joining. Excited to have the conversation or to hear from you all today. I'm gonna try to keep my remarks brief. Again, Corey Connolly, I lead the Office of Climate and Energy. I'm joined on the call with some folks from our office, Julia Field and Cheyenne Ghosh, who are helping with this work from our office. I'm gonna run through quickly just a little bit of a recap on the My Healthy Climate Plan. Some details on some of the electricity sector work that we've done so far, and then we'd like to open the floor and really get your input. And before we go to the next slide, I'll just say we always imagined that the My Healthy Climate Plan would be iterative and that we would continue to have fidelity to the goals set out there and the goals that the governor is committed to, and then continuing to get input on how we actually achieve those goals. So that's really what tonight is about, is getting additional input. We've done quite a bit of work. It's been a couple of years, and we're digging in on cleaning the electric grid, and we want input, and then we also want partnership on how do we actually meet these targets moving forward. So we'll dig in a little bit in a second on the electricity sector, but we're doing these sessions across each pillar of the My Healthy Climate Plan, and think now is no better time than now to do it. So you could advance the slides. So My Healthy Climate Plan, the high level goals, released in April 2022, so a couple years now. Primary goals: carbon neutrality by 2050, and then maintain net negative GHG emissions thereafter, and address environmental injustices related to climate. So again, the goals remain the same. These are the goals that the governor is committed to via executive directive. The plan is designed to meet those goals. And today we're talking about some of the efforts that we've done to hit those targets, to get us on track to hit those targets, and then talking about and hearing from you all about other ways that we may want to approach this and continue to update the strategy. So next slide, please. So going back to the My Healthy Climate Plan, like why did we do this, and what do we see the opportunity with the My Healthy Climate Plan and its actual implementation? So this gets to the kind of like one, why we did it, but also how we are trying to move toward implementation of the climate plan. So addressing environmental injustices, past, current, avoiding future, and ensuring equitable access to the new benefits of a clean economy. Fostering healthy communities, so improving health outcomes, and then creating jobs and reducing costs, so really an economic opportunity as well. Next slide. So what have we done, and where are we headed? We'll dig into a little bit on next steps later and talk through what's to come, but you can see over the years we've done a lot. The release of the climate plan in 2022, after a ton of input from work groups. Many of folks on this call participated in those topical work groups that were kind of come one, come all. And that is really a basis for a lot of the work that we're doing now. We've continued to get input throughout. Some folks will recall last year we did a series of in-person sessions that were structured around the entirety of the plan. But then we went across the state to try and get input from everyone on the across the plan on what we should be prioritizing in each pillar. Now we're kind of digging in deeper into how do we actually hit all the targets within a pillar to help meet our targets by 2030 and 2050. And there will be additional opportunities for engagement around other pillars and around the My Healthy Climate Plan writ large into the future. And you can see those kind of on the right of the screen there. So next slide, please. So what are the more detailed pieces of the My Healthy Climate Plan? So high level goals we talked about, but then in each pillar there's sort of a North Star goal. We have, the 40% of benefits going to low income disadvantaged communities, trying to set that as a floor, not a ceiling, in terms of ensuring those benefits. Cleaning the electric grid, which is what we're talking about today. We set a target of 60% renewable energy by 2030. Folks will recall that there are a number of kind of metrics here flying around with a variety of kind of distinctions. So there's a 100% clean electricity standard by 2040 that was passed by the legislature. There's a 50% renewable energy standard by 2030 that was passed by the legislature. The climate plan calls for 60% renewable energy through a combination of that 50% renewable energy standard and additional options that are customer driven, like voluntary green pricing and rooftop solar. So there are a number of numbers flying around. We won't get into all the methodology and everything, but the climate plan really calls for 60% renewable generation by 2030. Then you can see some of these other real world metrics that are targets in each of the other pillars. I won't get into those too deeply, but you can see on the left, there are a variety of sessions that are coming up in December and January that folks can participate in for those other pillars. Next slide, please. So today, I want to talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing. So one of the major commitments we had coming out of the My Healthy Climate Plan was to dig in deeper to develop a statewide greenhouse gas inventory. We released a greenhouse gas inventory earlier this year as a part of the priority climate action planning process that was dictated by the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program under the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. We've continued to dig in deeper so that we can really identify where the emissions are coming from. And Michigan's electric power sector, we're relying on EPA's tools, their state inventory tool, the SIT model. And we're really looking at three areas. So the way that typically these things are broken out is more based on source. So you have the fossil fuel combustion category at the top. That's the bulk of what we're looking at in terms of emissions in the electricity sector. But there are also other power sector emissions through electricity distribution, through industrial processes, stationary combustion. So we're putting all that together. And then the next slide is sort of the economic breakdown. So next slide. So that is all to get from the inventory, which is looking at sources of emissions and is kind of categorized in a way that isn't always intuitive, to translating that into the real world of the electric power sector. So any emissions coming from generation of electricity kind of across the board, and from that sector, that's 29%. So still biggest chunk of our emissions profile here in Michigan, and is really why we're digging in on this. And then I'll make a point here of one of the reasons the clean electric grid is such a major priority for us is, yes, we know that there are solutions that already exist that are ready to go. We have momentum there, but also the solutions in some of these other pillars. So energy intensive industries, the built environment, transportation, a lot of the kind of like first steps in those sectors do lead to efficiency and electrification. Which means we need a clean electric grid to be able to take those measures in those other sectors. And so that's really why the electricity sector is such a foundational piece of what we're trying to do, and is you'll see that reflected when we talk about the actions that we've taken later in the deck. Next slide, please. So I'll skim through these quickly because I do really want to get to the part where you all talk to us instead of the part where I talk at you. The largest contributor in the electricity sector continues to be coal. You can see a decline of 45% since 2005. And you can see some of the other dynamics here of, some of the increased natural gas usage. We've got these slides up mostly because we've been digging into like where are the emissions coming from and trying to help identify, exactly what we need to do to get to that carbon neutrality market 2050 and the 60% target by 2030. So next slide, please. So this is another visualization of this. So on the left, you'll see where are the emissions coming from physically. I actually find this to be a really, instructive exercise to really think about where are the actual power plants and facilities, where are they located. You'll see here on the left, the orange are the remaining coal facilities, and you can see we've included the closure dates. So the My Healthy Climate Plan did call for getting off of coal by 2030. You can see that we are very close to that. But the Monroe facility is scheduled for 2032. And so we're still working on kind of figuring out how do we make sure that we make this transition to being the electric grid by 2030, and how do we make sure we hit our targets. And this is a helpful kind of exercise to look at what generation assets exist in the market currently and that we're relying on the right, and I won't get too far into this, but these are kind of the breakdown of the renewable versus non-renewable generation capacity. We can share the slides afterward, but I'm going to keep moving just so that we can get to the input portion. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we worked with many input from many of the folks on this call, and through a variety of processes. You saw those meetings before to really get to a set of priority climate actions. So what are the foundational things that we know we absolutely need to do right away? What are the things that are going to be catalytic and move us toward hitting those clean energy targets that we talked about? And we ended up landing on two as a part of that have really driven a lot of the work that we're doing across state government and with outside partners as well. And the first one's improving renewable siting and siting of renewable energy and energy storage across Michigan. And that has been a major focus. You'll see a couple of programs and some legislation that's tied to that in a second, just to give folks some context. And then similarly, invest in energy storage and necessary electric grid investments. That's a constant, a major priority to make sure that we actually have the infrastructure and the resource adequacy to take the renewables that we're calling for. Next slide, please. So the My Healthy Climate Plan has lots and lots of things in it. We don't need to go through all of these, but you can see there's a bunch of nuance to what was called for and what we're working toward. Things like supporting voluntary green pricing programs to help drive additional adoption of renewables. Some of the investments that are going to help us make sure that we have an energy storage necessary for this transition. So 2,500 megawatts by 2030. And investments in the Utility Consumer Representation Fund, which is the fund that the Utility Consumer Participation Board operates, are just to name a few. Next slide, please. So some of the things that have happened since the climate plan was released, and thanks to the leadership of Governor Whitmer and the legislature for bringing these forward and moving them and getting them to the point where the governor could sign them. A 100% clean energy standard by 2040 that includes a 50% renewable energy standard as called for in the climate plan by 2030, a variety of other kind of measures across the board, the creation of the Office of Worker and Economic Transition, and then a variety of measures to kind of help make it easier to host renewables in communities across Michigan to help us meet our clean energy and climate targets. Finally, you'll see we've taken actions in state government to make sure that we're procuring 100% renewable energy and are working toward that. Next slide. So some of the other initiatives that are going on that are a bit more like programmatic that you all will recall and hopefully helps emphasize the kind of prioritization and how important these types of meetings are to how we're going to roll out programming and what we're going to focus on. We've really pursued aggressively investments in renewable energy under the Inflation Reduction Act through competitive awards such as the Solar for All Award that is $156 million to get renewables, solar and storage, and enabling upgrades to low-income households. The Renewable Ready Community Awards program, which is a combination of state budget and leadership there from the governor. And then also we applied for a competitive award under the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program for $129 million that really is going to help invest even more capital to incentivize communities to really help us meet this challenge and build more renewables across the state. Similarly, we have an investment in the renewable energy on brownfields that comes through that same competitive award. And then we have a variety of programs that are constantly working toward this issue through our energy services section. And then some of the work at the commission with the Renewable Energy and Electrification Infrastructure Enhancement and Development Grant Program, which we're going to see a ton of really awesome stuff rolling out over the next, I know the projects have been selected, and I think it's going to result in some pretty incredible projects across the state. So next slide, please. Well, so that's it for me. I'm going to hand it back over. I kind of went through that fast. It still wasn't fast enough, in my opinion, because we still want to hear from all of you. So again, really, we're excited to hear from you, and it's important for us to continue to get this input. And it's the only way that we're going to be able to meet these targets is if we can continue to iterate, identify better ways to do this, and make sure that we're all engaged in doing this. The old adage that we say all the time at our events and everything is, to change everything, we need everyone. And that really starts with cleaning the electric grid here. So excited to hear more from you all about how we can do that. So Jennifer.
Thank you, Corey. So I see that we have 120 people on now. I'm going to run through real quickly how we will run this portion. So what we're going to do is you'll see on the screen here that if you have a comment, please use the raise your hand icon, and then Zoom will add you to our queue. If we have anyone on the phone wanting to comment, you will hit #2 to raise your hand. I see that we have a couple people on via the phone. And when it's your turn to speak, we will go ahead and call your name. And then if you could please say your name and your organization if you represent one, and then we'll start the timer for 3 minutes. And like Corey had mentioned, we are here to listen. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. And since we do have so many people, we do have to limit it to 3 people, or 3 minutes max per person. So what you'll do is you'll see a timer go on in the top right of your screen. As it's approaching the 3-minute mark, it will turn red. If you could wrap up your comments, you'll hear a beep at the end of the 3 minutes, and we'll move on to the next person. All right. And if we can't get through all of your comments tonight, you can always submit additional comments, or if you didn't get everything in your 3-minute slot, to that eagle-oce@michigan.gov email. And that will get to our Office of Climate and Energy too. And we will also try to do our best to keep a list in the chat of people who are on deck so that people can be prepared to unmute when it's your turn. So I see we actually already have 4 hands raised. And so what I'm going to do is start with, so I'll mention the first couple so they can get ready. So the first one is Victor Jimenez, and I apologize for mispronouncing names. So that's the first one. And then Melissa Kedry. So those 2 will be up first. And then after them, I have Laura Judge and Jace Bailenja on deck. And we'll put these in the chat too. So Victor, I am going to unmute you. All right. Can you do a quick test so we can make sure, Victor? Are you there?
It says you've unmuted me, and I'm Kim Hunter. I have my hand raised, but that's who's the thing popped up for.
Oh, okay. So if you could say your name again, that would be great.
Kim Hunter, Kim Hunter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, what I had was really a question, and you can answer it in the chat or contact me later or whatever. But I saw all the stuff for getting to carbon free whatever by these certain dates. I'd like to know 2 things. One, what are the incremental book benchmarks that you have to meet to get to those? And 2, are the two big utilities, consumers and DTE, are they on board with those benchmarks? Or do they have plans to meet those benchmarks? Because if they don't meet them, I don't see how the state of Michigan could meet them. And that's my question.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to. You're the first one, so I'm a little rusty on the timer. All right, I appreciate that. We're going to go to the next person, and that is Melissa Kadri.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm really excited about this plan. I'm just a little worried about affordability, especially considering most of the power that that people get is through DTE, and like the person before me said, I don't know how we really move forward without getting DTE on board, or how we really get around that because they produce so much of the coal, as you saw, or even just like the other natural gas. And what we really need is like to invest more in wind. I know that there's programs for investing in solar and everything. I'm a little skeptical about the solar just because we live in a very cloudy state, more or less. So I don't know how that would carry out over into the winter unless we also invest in energy storage, like really into a lot of energy storage. um I also want to mention that I have seen like programs around for like getting people to get solar. I know you guys mentioned wanting to work with like the community, to work with the citizens, because this is, coming from both sides. From what I have seen and talked to people about, just like normal conversations, people are kind of skeptical about these programs to get people into solar for the reasons I mentioned, like, how does this carry on over into, like the winter and stuff when, or the fall and winter when it's very cloudy and there's really no sun? How do we, trust these sources? So I think Eagle, what they really need to do is also, maybe communicate better. I'm not saying you're not communicating more, but like for some reason it's not getting into like day-to-day people. Like all this conversation. I know it because I keep up with it. But like, like an average everyday person, um, they might not be aware of like the more details. They might not even be aware this is like actually happening in Michigan, that we passed these laws. So I think perhaps if Eagle or like the state of Michigan invested in like some form of like communication to get this, to get the word out, to get people more interested, to get more perspective so that Eagle can understand how this might impact people, or like get more impact from people. Um that let me see. I think yeah, that was mainly it. I'm just worried about like affordability, the climate justice of it all. Like, where are we going to put these things? How will it impact the local communities? And the energy storage, and then just DTE. That's my main concerns. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. All right. So we have Laura Judge next.
Hi, yeah, Laura Judge. I'm from West Michigan, the Holland area, and just really want to encourage your office to try to work really intensively and proactively with the three local government units that surround the three coal plants that will be closing. Um, we've got the Campbell plant here on the west side of the state that's going to be closing the soonest. And I would just dearly love to see wind and solar go in there and make use of those transmission lines, but it's going to be a heavy lift, I think, between the utility and the local government units, the county and the township area. So I think the same kind of redevelopment in renewables has been done in Canada. I forget now if it was on Lake Ontario area. And I just, when I see that, I think, oh, please, if we could just have that here with these 3 coal plants that are going to be closing, let's just make use of those transmission lines and really do something special. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up we have Jace Bylinja.
Hello. Hi, my name is Jace Bylinga, and I am a resident in Southwest Michigan in Arlington Township in Van Buren County. I'm also a staff member with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. And I'm really excited about the my Michigan Healthy Climate Plan and making sure we can clean up our energy grid. My family and I live out in the country, and having a more reliable grid that also gives us access to renewable energy that will help us meet our climate goals is really exciting for me and my neighbors. And I'm really hoping to move away from my really expensive propane furnace. Propane's not cheap, and I get these huge bills when the propane company decides to deliver it. And so I'm really looking forward to taking advantage of some assistance so I can clean my energy, make my home more energy efficient, and access some of that wind and solar power. And I've as part of my work, I've talked to people all over the state at their door in person about these laws and about the climate plan. And people are excited to get help to site these major wind and solar projects in their communities. Once you explain to them, how the state is going to work with local communities to make sure that these big corporations aren't going to take advantage of them, and that it's going to really help farmers and local community members with good jobs. Like, we're all really excited about that. And so I really appreciate you helping to clean the electric grid. And I'll just leave my time for the rest of folks. Thank you so much for doing this. And like I said, a lot of people from the Indiana border to Lake Superior, I talked to people in the last few months, and people are really excited about climate action. Thank you.
Thank you, Jace. I'm just going to take a quick minute to remind people that we are not answering questions in the chat. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hands. Or if you don't want to do that in front of everybody, you can also send comments to eagle-oce@michigan.gov. All right, so now we have Rachel Bruitzer.
Hello, my name is Rachel, and I'm a resident of Macomb County, and therefore I'm an automatic customer of DTE. I'm also an organizer with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. I just want to say thank you so much for, letting people speak about how we can implement these super important plans for a cleaner future. Renewable energy is so important. However, it is more than just making sure that we are reducing our carbon emissions. When we are structuring our energy grid, it also needs to be more reliable and provide more options for residents of Michigan. Like I said, I'm basically an automatic customer of DTE. There are not many other options to be able to search around for the best prices and the best services. I'm automatically stuck with whatever I'm given, and I don't have a choice. So many people don't have a choice. Growing up throughout so much of my youth, I rarely ever lost power, and now all of a sudden in these past 5 years, we're losing power once, twice, 3 times every year. And it's usually for days on end. And it always feels like it could be another week or two before we even get power because it takes so long. So when we're implementing these new clean energy structures, we need to make sure that it's going to be more reliable for our residents and offering up more options instead of just the monopoly that so many of these different energy companies hold across the area. So making sure that yes, we're reducing our emissions, but we're also making sure that people's power continues to stay on and also providing people a choice for who they can choose for their rates and for their reliability. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Andrew Collins. Andrew, are you there? Andrew Collins, are you there? Okay. Andrew, we cannot hear you right now, so we're going to go on to the next person. Next person that's up is, and I apologize, I probably won't pronounce this one correct, Ko Lemieux.
Howdy. Thank you so much for the time. It's pronounced KO, but not a big deal.
All right,
Uh,
thank you.
yeah. Yeah, I'm a resident of the
Hold on, I think you got muted. Let's try this again.
Okay, cool. Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
Awesome. But yeah, not sure when I cut off there.
You can start from the beginning.
Yeah, so I'm a resident in the Van Buren Township / Belleville area. I also work for Michigan LCV, and first off, I want to thank you guys for the work you're doing, trying to condense pretty massive and pretty essential topics down to a point that they're consumable by the general public. The thing I would just like to comment on, and I don't expect you guys to have already made a contingency plan for this, but I do feel like Eagle needs to take into consideration some of the data center legislation that has recently passed and how that might impact these carbon emission targets, right? Um, there's plenty of data out there that shows that these data centers, their resource just leaches on local communities for the most part, and they drain they really are a suck on public utilities, and energy is the most glaring example of that. And the way that this legislation can alter and give the utilities an out for some of their renewable energy targets and therefore their carbon emission targets is really concerning, and that can really it feels like if we don't adequately plan for how this legislation can really really affect those targets, it could be a one step forward, two steps back situation. So I just encourage Eagle and everyone else listening to account for this and to reach out to your legislators and make sure that we are holding these utilities accountable and not giving them more outs than they need, so that we can make sure that we hit really important these really important goals that we have set forth. So thanks again for the work you guys do, and that's just my flag that data centers are coming and we need to plan for those as well.
Thank you. Okay, up next we have Mark Dirth. Are you there, Mark?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. I'm Mark Dirth. I'm from Grosse Pointe Shores, Michigan, and I'm a retired analytical chemist from Ford Motor Company, just to give you some background. I have some very specific questions in mind here for you. I looked through your brief presentation, and frankly, I would like to have seen and heard more from you on the details of these plans. For instance, we have been shown a slide with grid scale storage of 4 kilowatts, 4,000 kilowatts, or 4,000 megawatts by 2040. This seems hopelessly inadequate compared to other states and the progress they're making. For instance, if we were to look at Texas and benchmark against what Texas is doing already, the level of renewables that they're using there is over 25% of their total energy requirement. And they're installing distributed energy storage throughout the state to help them. Now, I understand that that's a remote utility setup for Texas, but why can't we do more here in this state? It just is kind of disappointing that we're so scaled back compared to what others are doing. And the amount of renewables we have in this state are very, very low compared to other states, particularly Texas and other states that have been more progressive. When I look around Lake St. Clair, for instance, I look across the lake and I see the Canadian shoreline, and I can easily count at least 100 wind-powered systems over there installed along the shoreline. We have zero. We have zero. And I understand the thumb is beginning to install solar and wind. And I've been up there in the last couple of years and have seen the installations. But this seems to be a very, very slow progress for our state. And with the democratic system we have in place right now in this state, I think we'd be much more further along in the renewable market. And one of the areas I think that we really need to focus on is distributed energy. The future, 50 years from now, how much of the energy are we going to be getting off the grid versus local energy source? For instance, battery backup and solar panels on homes and so on. This is something that I'd like to see a document on from the state, looking at stepwise how we're going to get from where we are now to where the future will bring us in 50 years. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, and I'd look forward to any response you guys have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Up next is Amanda Costello.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to speak. My name is Amanda Costello. I'm a resident of Canton, Michigan. I'm a customer of DTE. I'm also an organizer with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. I'm here to just emphasize the importance of accountability for utility companies. I'm really excited about the transition to 100% clean renewable energy by 2040. But along the way, that shouldn't put a burden on families in terms of cost. In general, energy costs should not exceed 6% of a person's annual income. That is what I believe. And utility companies continuing to request rate hikes puts a heavy burden on families. I am encouraging that continued transition to clean energy, but it's really time to make sure the utilities are meeting their targets in the clean energy transition without unfairly raising costs. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, next up, we're going to try to go back to Andrew Collins. Andrew, are you there?
Hello, yes?
All right, we hear you.
All right, audio fixed. Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment today. My name is Andrew Collins, and I live in West Michigan, Grand Rapids, Kentwood, specifically. I'm here to urge Eagle to prioritize both affordability and accountability as we work towards Michigan's transition to 100% clean renewable energy. Right now, utility costs are becoming unaffordable for too many Michiganders. For many households, energy costs are getting close to and sometimes exceeding 6% of their annual income, which is widely considered unaffordable. Meanwhile, we're seeing repeated rate hike requests from utility companies, both consumers and DTE, and then rate hike approvals that seem out of step with what's fair or necessary. I believe Eagle has a critical role to play in ensuring utility companies meet both clean energy targets while protecting Michigan residents and keeping them protected from excessive cost increases. Affordability and equity must be the center of this transition. Without that, we risk leaving families behind and undermining the very support that's necessary for these goals to be achieved. Please hold utility companies accountable, both for hitting renewable energy milestones and for sharing the financial burden of this transition fairly. This is not just an environmental issue, but an economic and social one. Thank you for your time and for your work on these critical issues.
Thank you, Andrew. Next up is Ian Seeger.
Hello?
Yes, we hear you. Go ahead.
Excellent. Yes, my name's Ian. I live in Lansing. I'm an AmeriCorps member with the my Healthy Climate Corps. I had a concern about the rollout with electric vehicles. On its face, it seems really good. We're getting rid of using gasoline power, and it certainly has the immediate benefit of outsourcing pollution from in our streets and our cities to being centralized to wherever the power is being generated. But as we get more and more electric vehicles, that's going to put more and more stress on the grid. So the concern would be that we're just, as we expand our renewable energy sources, that we're not really able to draw down the fossil fuel sources because the stress on the grid just becomes greater and greater as more and more people go with electric vehicles. So I just want to know how much that demand as we go forward is being factored in to your plans and how you see that being handled in a way that actually lets us get off the fossil fuels, or how much other alternatives to electric cars. I mean, it seems like we're going all in on electric. If there was some sort of a sustainable liquid fuel, that it might be a better option, but I know that there's always an issue with them. So yeah, that's basically my concern. I think that's where I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Ian. Next up is Craig Bloomer. Craig Bloomer, can you unmute yourself?
Okay. Hello. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Greg Bloomer from Washtenaw County. I'm a mechanical engineer. And my comments are, in addition to the prior comments about the energy storage targets, I find those targets, as the prior speaker said, very low and not very much satisfactory for our long-term goals here to transition to more solar and wind, which will require a lot more storage. I'd add the Ludington pump storage plant that was built back in the 1970s. That's almost enough capacity to already meet the goal that we've established for next year. So again, not very aggressive goal at all. Beyond that, another 1,500 megawatts over the next 5 years. Across the country, there's a lot of plants being built or already online, exceeding 500 megawatts each. So that only amounts to a couple storage plants in our targets. When I've looked at the utility plans on energy storage, they've been very much behind the state of the industry. They're still talking about pilot plants and adjusting or trying to find rate systems that will encourage storage plants to be developed. So we have to set some more aggressive goals, I believe, and they'll become essential to establishing a clean grid that is reliable when we have intermittent storage. Finally, I'd say there's a lot of different storage technologies that are under development and deployment across the country. And so Michigan is really losing out an opportunity there to be part of the innovation and manufacturing boom in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Okay, next up is Brandi Sweet.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you? Okay. My name is Brandi Sweet. I'm from Paris, Michigan. This whole plan kind of is concerning. I've attended one of the in-person meetings in Grand Rapids. The reason why it's concerning to me is because the recent actions the governor has taken here in Michigan are quite contradicting to, trying to fight the climate change and, it doesn't seem real clean and green. If you look at where our taxpayer dollars are going here recently, all the developments that have been chosen are on pristine wild spaces or farmland. For example, the mega sites, such as in Marshall, Mundy, and where I'm from, Paris, Michigan, Green Charter Township. We're said to be getting the Goshen EV battery factory, which, a lot of people should look into these, like the amount of water usage, the toxic chemicals, the wastewater that occurs from them. And, the property here that has been chosen is on 60 acres of pristine wetlands, cold transitional streams, less than a mile from the Muskegon River, which is Michigan's second largest river. And, there's no environmental impact statements attached to any of these mega sites and these developments. And, I hear a lot of people trying to say that we should push a little faster, but when we push faster for certain things, and this is a new technology that, studies are lacking in places, that we should not be letting these big corporations and these developments with our tax dollars cut environmental corners. If this is so needed, we should be having environmental impact statements attached to them and proving and prior water testing, all these different things that are not occurring with these mega sites and is very concerning, especially our number one, climate fighter is supposed to be wetlands and things. I don't know why we're not protecting these areas a little bit more. And that's just all I ask for, people to look into a little bit more. In Mundy, it's supposed to be a semiconductor site, and Biden administration just cut environmental reviews for semiconductor facilities. This is concerning. There's PFAS like crazy that are known to come out of these facilities and things. And, we just need to not push and cut corners is all I'm saying. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brandi. Next up is Amani Johnson.
Good evening. Can you hear
Good
me?
evening. Yes.
Thank you for taking the time to hear from the public about the My Healthy Climate Plan. My name is Amani Johnson. I'm a proud resident of Southfield. I'm a renter. I'm also a member of the Southfield Public Schools Board of Education, and I work for the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. As a renter, I know how hard it can be to keep up with rising energy bills. For many people in my community, those bills aren't just an inconvenience, they can make or break a household budget. And that's why I strongly support efforts to lower energy costs, especially for low-income families, so that no one has to spend more than 6% of their income just to keep the lights on and the heat on. Renewable energy and efficiency programs can make a real difference for people like me and my neighbors. As a school board member, I also see a big opportunity for schools to get involved in the clean energy transition. In Southfield and across Michigan, many districts have vacant properties due to declining enrollment that could be turned into renewable energy sites like solar farms or battery storage projects. These could save schools money, create local clean energy, and even bring in extra revenue. But plus, they're a great opportunity for students to get excited about careers in clean energy while giving them a healthier environment to grow up in. Phasing out coal plants and shifting to renewable energy by 2030 isn't just a climate goal, it's about protecting public health and making our energy system more affordable and reliable. Cleaner air means fewer asthma attacks and sick days for kids in my district and beyond. It's a win for our health and for our wallets. This plan also needs to prioritize equity. That means making sure low-income communities and renters have access to the benefits of clean energy, from lower bills to energy-efficient upgrades. Everyone deserves a chance to be a part of this transition, not just homeowners or those with extra resources. I urge you to keep pushing forward with policies that expand clean energy, modernize the grid, and reduce energy burdens for families. This work is vital for our schools, our communities, and our future. Thank you.
Thank you, Amani. Next up is Marshall Murdoch.
Hi there. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, awesome. So good evening. My name is Marshall Murdick. I'm currently a sophomore geology student at Grand Valley State University, making me a resident of Allendale, Michigan. And I'm also an intern for the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. So I'm here, like probably a lot of people, because I care about tackling climate change. That's something that's really shaping my education and career goals. So clean energy isn't just about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, though that's obviously critical. It's also about creating good jobs, lowering energy costs, and ensuring all Michiganders benefit, especially those who have been most impacted by pollution and high energy burdens. Renewable energy sources like wind and solar can make our energy system cleaner, more affordable, and more accessible for everyone. I'm really inspired by the opportunity to use places like brownfields and old industrial sites for renewable energy projects. Transforming these neglected areas into clean energy hubs is a win in a lot of areas. It helps the environment, revitalizes communities, and ensures renewable energy reaches the people and places that need it most. To make that vision a reality, we also need to invest in modernizing our electric grid and expanding energy storage. These upgrades are essential to retiring coal plants sooner and integrating renewables effectively and making clean energy reliable and affordable for all Michiganders. As someone studying climate science and a young person wanting a sustainable future for our planet, I see these steps as critical. I urge Eagle to prioritize clean energy deployment and ensure that it's affordable and accessible to everyone. So thank you for your time and for all the work you're doing to lead us through the My Healthy Climate Plan.
Thank you, Marshall. Up next is Michael Porras. Michael Porras. Sorry, we forgot to put your name in the chat. Michael, are you there? Give it another second for Michael Porras. All right, we will move on. And Michael, if you want to comment later, you can raise your hand again. Next up is John Forslund.
Hi, this is John Forsland. I'm in Marquette. I'm a member of the Climate Reality Project. I would like to support Mark Dirth's earlier comments about the importance of distributed energy. We really have to get away from the long wire line distribution of energy for a lot of reasons. It's hard to maintain, but also it's a security risk. I'm very concerned about the examples we've seen in California and I think South Carolina of people motivated with high-powered rifles taking out substations. And we had examples earlier overseas of people taking out substations with dump trucks and heavy equipment. We have to get away from that, and we can do that by producing power closer to where it is produced. We have a lot of rooftops in cities and towns, on fire stations, on town halls, and so on, that can be used to produce and store local energy. And a couple of comments have drifted towards this. I've been concerned since the beginnings of the plan that it does not seem to have the required level of urgency. This is a big deal. We have to get on it. We have to get on top of it and get behind it and push very, very hard. All right, thank you.
Thank you, John. Next up is Sarah Hutchinson.
Hey, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Sarah.
Incredible. Thanks so much. So I have a couple comments that I'd like to submit. First of all, I would really love to see some sort of scenario planning going on for the comprehensive climate action plan. In particular, as we've seen a lot of headlines and things come out from the incoming administration, we know that the next year is going to be volatile. And so especially, trying to make sure that we're prepared as much as we can in the event, the loan from the loan programs office for Palisades, goes under, or the investment tax credit, the production tax credit, all these things that are really, coming through the IIJA and really, funding this and making this cost competitive. And even cheaper than fossil fuels. I think it's important to consider those realities, just to make sure that we're as prepared as possible as we go, into this upcoming year. And second, I think it was someone else who mentioned renters. I think renters is a particularly difficult area to try and address, especially when it comes to the electricity sector. And so wherever possible, I think it would be really awesome to see, sort of, two approaches of how can we incentivize, perhaps corporate landlords to start siting solar panels or things like that on top of the roofs of some of their buildings. And also, how can we empower from a grassroots perspective the members of a community to approach their landlord with some of these things, in addition to things like green lease provisions and things like that. So I recognize that you all have a ton to do in the next year, and I'm sure you'll do great work. And thanks so much for holding this.
Thank you, Sarah. Up next is Jace Hazel. I may be saying that totally wrong. Jace Hazel, you're up next. Okay, I think we're
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, I think I'm having a bit of a technical issue. I am serving as an environmental justice fellow in the Office of Environmental Justice Public Advocate, and I have issues and concerns regarding community solar and also regarding wireless charging public roads for electric vehicles. I live in the city of Detroit, and I know that last year, MDOT unveiled the first, I believe the first in the country, wireless charging public roadway for electric vehicles. And I wondered, are there any more planned for other parts of Wayne County, other parts of the city of Detroit? Right now, it's just like a quarter mile on the 14th Street corridor near Michigan Central Station. But for those of us who live west or east in the city, it's very difficult to get around. The transit system is very, very poor. We're relying on the bus system, which is very poor. Inside the city of Detroit, and the connections to our suburban neighbors is very challenging also, which greatly impacts low-income residents getting to jobs that are not just in the city of Detroit. So I just wonder, because I see mobility programs for driverless vehicles being launched, and for a person with disabilities like myself, once again, those programs do not go east or west in the city of Detroit, let alone outside of the city of Detroit. They're really just clustered in the downtown or midtown area. So I'm just wondering if the state of Michigan has any plans for more wireless charging public roadways for electric vehicles and for community solar projects, particularly wireless charging public roadways for those of us who have mobility disabilities. Thank you.
Next up, we have Dennis Burke.
Hello. Thanks for doing this evening. It's very nice to have people have a chance to comment. I'll try to be quick since we're out of time, I think, by my clock. I think first of all, we need to focus on renewable. And I'm very concerned about the recent announcements of the restart of several nuclear power plants in this state. Anybody that thinks that nuclear is renewable is sadly mistaken. And obviously, these are being restarted by Microsoft and others for AI data centers. Second thing I would like you guys to consider is I think you could move a lot quicker on renewable energy installation. I'm hoping that Eagle considers and the state considers all of the public buildings, parks, public schools, state-supported universities like University of Michigan has already a sustainability and climate action. Why aren't we moving very quickly to convert all those to geothermal, solar, and very low energy or no energy use? I think that's something that can be done very quickly. And why not put solar panels in the medians of expressways so we don't have to be mowing and burning diesel fuel and gasoline to maintain them? So that's my primary comments. Appreciate what you're doing. Good luck and thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I see that Michael Porris's hand is raised again. Michael, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I couldn't unmute before. So someone just mentioned nuclear and I wanted to ask about that as well. I missed I didn't see the whole presentation earlier on. So I didn't see how much of the plan is nuclear or not. But I wanted to ask about that. Someone mentioned the 3 coal plants that are going offline, and there are efforts in other parts of the country to take those old coal plant sites and put small modular reactors on them as those come online. And there's a big push. Someone mentioned Microsoft. There's a lot of investment in small modular reactors. The United States is behind the rest of the world in that. There's a huge race to get those going all over the world. And we're actually behind in that. And it's going to come, and they are much safer than nuclear as we've known it. And this idea of putting them onto old coal sites where all the infrastructure is already there is a really interesting model that is happening right now in some other states. And while it's still a ways off as the technology is still developing, there are some that are being built and being done right now. So I'm curious if that's something that's being looked at because, and someone else mentioned the data centers, AI and the data is actually a much bigger draw and power requirement than electric cars and basically everything else. And so as we go in that direction, we're just not going to have enough power. And as favorable as I am as for solar and wind, I don't think we can meet all of the needs that we're going to need with just solar and wind. So I think the small modular reactors are a really interesting direction to go, and I'd like to see that as something that I'm curious if that's something Michigan's looking at. Thanks.
Jennifer, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I'm like going on and on. So anyway, I was just looking and we don't have any other hands raised, but I'm going to give it another minute. We do have a little bit more time. If you already spoke, we will not be taking you again because we do have to have that 3 minutes max per person, but you can submit your comments to the eagle-oce@michigan.gov, and we'll make sure to include that with the whole group. I also just wanted to say, I find it interesting, nobody went past the 3 minute mark. So I really appreciate you guys staying on task. And it's very inspiring to see all of the people that came together tonight to comment. So I do see we do have one new person. So we'll go ahead. And David Larson, you're going to be next. And if I don't see any others in the next 30 seconds, we'll have David be our last person, and then I'll send it over to Corey. All right, go ahead, David. David, can you unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I went to Indiana University, and the university library, they didn't how they heated that system was they put water through the pipes, and that's how the whole building was cooled or heated, and I don't know how that process happened, but it seems that's a resource that just moving it is about the only concern that I would have. But in terms of using coal or any other of the traditional energy sources, moving the water through the building seems like that could be a alternative. I'm not an engineering person, but it seems like it was a good way to go. I've gone to some of the action teams, and I think you guys are doing a good job, and it's going too fast might be a problem, but at the same time, the way you started the presentation is a good way to tackle this problem. But thank you, and I plan on coming to some of the future sessions. Thank you for having this and having public comment.
Great, thank you, David. I do see we do have another hand raised. Victor Jimenez. I know when we called this name earlier, it was somebody else, so I'm just double checking.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Victor Jimenez. I am a resident of Woodhaven, Michigan, a customer of DTE, not by choice, and an organizer with the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. Thank you very much for holding this space for us to give public comment and for your presentation earlier about electrifying the grid. I'd like to echo all the comment that some of my colleagues have submitted as well, as just make sure that Eagle feels empowered to use all of their authority to electrify the grid as expediently as possible. We know that we need to improve our grid to meet our clean energy demands, and we need to focus all of our efforts on providing clean and renewable energy. Furthermore, corporate polluters, DTE, other utility companies, consumers, etc., all the rest, they need to be held accountable. They need to make sure that they're providing reliable, affordable energy and energy that's coming from renewable and clean resources. And just as an extension of what I was saying about the pollution and the industry, I think it's paramount that Eagle begins to, not only enforce these fines, but not allow these fines to become a part of the price of doing business, as they have been. And I would encourage the organization and the department to shut down repeat polluters who have seemed to have make these fines a part of the cost of doing business, especially as a lifelong community member of Southwest Detroit. I've seen the impact of all of the compound different of the compound sources of pollution, truck traffic, dust, um, and it all has a compound effect. So please keep this in mind. Please continue to do a great job, and please feel empowered to use all of your authority to electrify the grid and hold folks accountable. Thank you very, very much for holding the space for us, and I hope everyone has a great evening. We will see you at future hearings.
Thank you, Victor. And I do not see any other hands, and I just want to, again, thank you all so much for taking the time to comment on the electric grid session tonight. I'm going to hand it back over to Corey, who is going to close us out.
Hey everyone, thank you. So I'll keep it brief. What you can expect next is we're going to continue doing these pillar by pillar virtual listening sessions. You can see here, you can see the little "we are here." That's us tonight. So I know we heard from some folks some concerns about some of the other kind of sectors, some of the transportation considerations, some of the homes, some of the protecting land and water, driving clean innovation, and addressing challenges with cleaning industry. We would encourage you all to come back to that and invite your friends. We'll have more of these sessions as we go, and really appreciate the input you all are providing. Next slide, please. So finally, those next steps are really the next steps related to this ongoing input process for the My Healthy Climate Plan and our continued implementation broadly across a bunch of things that we're doing at the state of Michigan, and to inform any updates that we're making through a couple of the EPA programs we're a part of. But we also are constantly getting input through other means, and we have other programs out in the world. I know I see some of the folks on the call are My Healthy Climate Corps members. We have a Justice 40 accelerator that's out in the world, and supporting community-based organizations across the state. We'll have the My Healthy Climate Conference in April, and then we're going to have additional opportunities for input on the design of things like our Solar for All program and a number of other things here. So we keep folks updated on that through the Climate Action News Updates newsletter, our My Healthy Climate Bulletin, and then we have quarterly Council on Climate Solution meetings that are virtual or in person that are open to the public to attend and observe those meetings with the council. So you can find more on our website and the QR code. Hopefully I rambled on enough here so that you could use the QR code if you wanted to. But all that is to say, thank you so much for taking the time and taking time out of your evening. We really appreciate you and appreciate the input you're providing. And we know that we can't accomplish the goals that we've got here without additional input and without working with all of you and many, many more folks. So really appreciate it, and take care.